Welcome back to the Kushka channel, everyone. I got a fun one for you today. This will be episode 5 in Project LB7 Duramax spool up. That first episode we removed the downpipe. Second episode we removed the manifolds and up pipes. Third episode we removed the turbo. Fourth episode we disassembled the turbo, and now we are going to rebuild the cartridge, all the internals in the cartridge, replace the snap rings, journal bearings, washers, oil seals, all that good stuff. And then we're gonna put it all back together, put on a nice brand new billet aluminum compressor wheel, and we're also gonna port the exhaust housing. And I think we do port the compressor housing as well, and then we port match the brand new KB Diesel Performance downpipe as well. So we have a lot to do in this one. It's going to be kind of a long one, but there are a lot of steps to doing this. So this is your jam. This is what you're into. This is what you're doing. This is what you're considering doing. Then definitely hit subscribe and like this video for me so we can get this out to other like-minded folks just like you and I. I'm pretty excited for this. At the very next episode, we're gonna go take it all on a test drive. So I'll have it all put back together for you, slap back in the engine bay, and we're gonna go take it for a little ripski and run into some complications. Not with the turbo. The turbo's gonna work great. The turbo still works great. We're gonna run into complications with either a head gasket or a lifted injector, which is gonna continue our series on to the next phase. So next one's gonna be fun as well. All right, guys, we better get into this. Okay, so I think next we're gonna rebuild this cartridge, and then gonna port match the exhaust housing. The exhaust housing has a bit of work to do to it, so let me pull this in a little bit so you can see it better. But you'll notice that there's this little step up right here. So not only do we have a little bit to cut off, you can see where it's all burnt on this little ridge right here, where it's burnt all the way around the perimeter. We can cut all of that out. We can cut back this step up and take it all the way back to the ramp. And I think the ramp is essentially where I'm going to stop, because that ramps up to the actual turbine, and you don't want to touch anything around the turbine at all. So I'm going to gasket match, take down the step up, or at least blend it into this ramp, and then I'll just polish up that ramp a little bit. I won't do anything crazy at all, and I'll leave all of this section where the turbine sits alone so that we don't make it any wider. It's fine as it is. I know some people like to port match the wastegate, but I think I'm just, maybe I'll clean up some of that carbon a little bit better, but I'm going to leave this side alone. Simply because, I don't really want my wastegate to flow incredibly well, because that's taking out the pressure of my my turbo. That's taking exhaust gases that could be going through my turbine, opening it up and letting it back out my exhaust pipe. And I don't want that to flow incredibly well. I'd rather that flow as it is and as it was designed to, because once you hit a certain pressure, PSI pressure, the wastegate will actuate, lift this open, and this flows right into here. Like so, if you spray water in here, it'll shoot right out here. The other thing going to port match is where the up pipes connect to this pedestal. You can actually see where this burnt ring is, and that's where exhaust gases were hitting it. That's where it's getting caught up when it smacks right into that. But exhaust gases, like water, do not like hard 90-degree angles. They don't just flow around. They go straight up and they get pushed, and that slows down your velocity a little bit and actually creates a little bit more heat than you want. And so since we already port matched the up pipes, we're gonna gasket match the up pipes. We're gonna gasket match this as well, and it'll have a nice 1-to-1 ratio. It'll just smooth very or it'll flow very smooth into that port. We're going to do the same thing on this side. Not quite as much needs to be taken out, but we'll just straighten that out a bit. Polish, you know, in here as much as we can. Get it all nice and blended. And if what everyone else is saying is true that has done this and actually put it on a dyno, I should see some decent gains just by doing this exhaust housing alone. So what I have read on the old forums that were backed up with some dyno charts, you know, it always depends on the truck and the dyno chart, who's dynoing, what the barometric pressure is, the elevation. So, you know, it's all going to change depending on your truck and where you are and, you know, what time of day it is even. But on average, it seems like most people are getting, with a 100% stock truck, about 40 horsepower gain just by port matching the exhaust side. Those with a more built truck, just the basic airflow mods and a tune. It's like a tune, cold air intake, a turbo horn, some intercooler pipes, hot and cold, and a free-flowing exhaust. Seeing upwards to 60 horsepower just by doing this. I'm also going to go a little bit further. This is, you know, not going to gain me a whole lot of extra power, but it will gain me some. So I'm going to blend that in, or take it down a little bit. Just widen it up just a little bit, not a whole lot, but I'll widen that up a bit. So you see there's a lot of meat on there, a lot of potential, and that should help it flow even better. All right, it's time to install the rebuild kit. Rebuild kit comes with everything you see here. It costs 50, 60 bucks on up, depending on which ones you get. And each of them have slightly different variations to a theme. This one's made by KB Diesel Performance. Has both oil bearings, 360 thrust bearing, washer. The big difference in this washer, and I'll show you after I get out of the package, is that the washer that I pulled out of it has a little flat part on it that faces down, and I think that's to let oil drain back out of that, I don't know what you call it, bearing journal, or where all the bearings and the shaft are, and let it drain back into here. The new one does not, so it's going to hold that oil in there a little longer and a little better. The longer the oil stays in the bearings, the better, I think. Also comes with one of these little bearing guys here that fits on that compressor plate. Looks like there's a new oil seal ring to install on it. Also has the oil seal ring that you put on the turbine itself. So we'll pull that off here in a minute. And then it comes with a bunch of new screws, snap rings. Should be pretty easy. I think I'll start off in the back by putting in a new bearing. So much like the bearings that I removed, these are tapered on both ends, and they are exactly the same height and everything. So looking at the bearings side by side, you know, you can tell which bearing has been in there. I don't know how well it shows up, but this one is a little more scuffed up, a little scratched up. But overall, I think it's in pretty good condition, and you can probably run it, throw it right back in a turbo if you wanted to. But since I got new ones, I got the whole kit, I might as well just use them. So first things first, drop that bearing in there. Well, let me get some lube. You want to oil everything. Just kind of gob it on there. Make sure your hands are clean, of course. Do just a little bit more. Now we just drop it in place. And then we'll take our washer here, plop that in place. I'm also gonna lube up under there a little bit. That goes straight down. I'm gonna put a little socket on there, give it a taparoo, just to make sure it's seated. And now it is seated. Making sure that bearing can still move around in there. And it can. Okay. Grab our second bearing. Also hit it with a layer of grease here. The reason why we are pre-lubing everything is because there'll be a little bit of time when we first drop in the turbo where the cartridge is not full of coolant or oil, so it'll be running dry. So we want it to be nice and lubed up for us. And that drops right in there. Let's grab a pick and make sure that it is moving freely, not bound up. Yep. So that'll spin just fine. Now the fun part is we got new snap rings to put in place. I'm not sure if my broken tool here is going to do the trick. I might have to grind it down a little bit to get it to fit in there the way I want it to. Or maybe, just maybe it will work. Or I can just get it right the first time. That's amazing. You want to move it around in there, make sure it's seated all the way. All right. So the kit comes with a new little spacer washer right here. You can see this one's just a little bit worn, not bad, but the new one does look like it is in a lot better shape. So we're gonna go ahead and just slap that on top there. And now we can throw on our 360 thrust bearing, or thrust plate, whatever you want to call it. You can see it's, you know, designed exactly the same. Old one, new one. And again, I can probably just run the old one if I wanted to, but got a new kit. I'm going to hold on to that old one just in case. So this only goes in one way because you got the two screws that are close together right here, and then two screws that are farther apart. So that's going to go, that only goes in one way. You'll want to line that up. I think I'm going to throw a little bit of lube on this one too. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Battery died in my camera. I'm not sure where we left off at, so I'll just back up a little bit here. So this is the thrust bearing plate I just put on. Seems like it has a nice tight tolerance. Oh, come on now. There we go. Don't do that. Okay, so I think we at least put in the washer and then the little spacer. New spacer. It's in a lot better condition than the old one. The old one was a little bit worn, just a little surface scratches. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I could probably rerun it. Same with the old thrust bearing here. Also looks pretty okay. In relation to the new one, they look exactly the same. This one does have a little bit of some surface wear on it, but it's nothing to get excited about. I think the whole bearing kit's probably still pretty good. Okay, so this only goes in one way, or it's only going to screw in one way, because you can see here it has two screws at top that are fairly far apart, two on bottom that are a little close together, and that's exactly how the thrust bearing is drilled as well. So let me just make sure I got all the crud out of there. So it only goes in one way, two holes that are far apart in the front there. So let me go ahead and ease this in. There we go. Good. Line up the drill holes there. And it does come with, the kit comes with new screws. They are Allen heads, so I don't know, maybe I'll toss them in. I almost prefer the Torx over the Allen. I'll show them to you side by side. You can see that we got a Torx and an Allen head. They both seem like they want to strip pretty easy, but I want to reuse the Torx. Let me just make sure that everything looks good here. So we need a little thread locker. I got some red 271 automotive engine industrial machinery heavy duty thread locker. Dab here. Not gonna over torque it just yet. Get everything in place. And last one. Oop. Okay, we have a little oil ring on here. We got to replace. I don't know if you can see that. See what I did there? I just kind of got that opening and I pried one end up and over that ridge, so it was in that bigger void, and then that ultimately is going to allow me to pull that thing right off. There's the old oil seal. Look at this new one here. Before I put it on, I'm going to go ahead and give this a good scrub and make sure I get all the carbon and everything out of there. Oh yeah. So with the old oil seal, you can see that there's been, I don't know if you can see that, there's a little ridge that's been cut. Hope I got the wrong one. Hold on. Oh, here we go. Now I got the same ones. So there's a little ridge that's been worn in there. I don't even know if you can see that compared to the new one. Old one, new one. So, before I install it, I'm just going to go ahead and clean all this gunk off that was trapped under the oil seal. There was just a ton of carbon built up here all together, so I'm surprised this thing was even spinning. So, I'm going to go ahead and clean this real quick. Okay, got her all cleaned up. Just used a pick really to scratch all that carbon out of there, and then switched over to a little brush. Even wire wheeled it a little bit. There was quite a bit of carbon built up under that oil ring, that oil seal ring. Okay, so to put this on, gotta be kind of careful. I think again I'm going to use the pick, but we can slide it over, get it right in there. Okay, seems like it's on there kind of loose compared to the old one, but it fits in the grooves. And it is cut a little bit different, so it'll pinch together and slide into each other if it needs to once it gets rested back into the cartridge there. Okay, so we got that done. Go ahead and replace the bearing on this plate here. This guy. It has an oil ring on it as well. Same deal, just kind of finesse it on there, pops right on. Pop right on there. Gonna compress that seal a little bit. There it is. There, now that's on. Forgot to lube it up, so I better do that real quick. Or a little grease around that ring as well. There. That's back on there. Okay, ready to reinstall the turbine shaft here. I know there's a bunch of lube in here already, but I'm just gonna go ahead and lube up the shaft real quick so that it's not running dry. And you know, I realize we're gonna pull an ignition relay, and we're gonna turn the starter, bump the starter so that we get some oil and coolant running through the turbo anyways, but you know, we'll just wanna go ahead and lube it up. Anywho, just for good measure. Little lube never hurt nobody. Okay, now this should just slide right in. Or hold on, we gotta put our little cap on here first. Where's that? Okay. Make sure to line this up with the scratch marks again. Hopefully I didn't take my scratch marks off. There it is. So scratch mark goes on the bottom there. I'm just gonna go ahead and pull a little bit. just a little thin layer of film, a little layer of grease here, just to help protect that metal a bit. Okay. Got a scratch mark. Get that on there. Now this should just slide right in. Yep. Seat's nice. Oh yeah, that feels nice. I thought the other one was pretty alright. But the other one was a little sloppy compared to this, and I think you want between 4 and 6 thousandths of wiggle there, a little bit of clearance between the shaft and the bearing. You don't want the shaft rubbing on the bearing. It'll cause premature wear and bearing failure, and you do want a layer of oil, or right now grease, in between them so that they're not touching. It'll last a lot longer. That feels pretty good. Feels like, yeah, that feels really good. Okay, so we got that back on. Go ahead and clean the surface a little bit. We're gonna put this plate back on here. All right, so we got that put back together. I'm going to go ahead and put some red RTV sealant, a red RTV gasket maker, high temp around here so we get a good seal and we don't leak any oil. It's important to not get it in the actual charger assembly in here. You don't want all this gunk floating around. We're also going to try to keep it out of our little screw hole things there. Get a healthy amount. Shaft down in there. And I'm going to go ahead and reuse these torque screws as well because they look pretty nice. Again, we'll put a little bit of thread locker on there. I don't know what the torque spec is. I'm gonna imagine probably 25 pounds or something, not too crazy. Okay, torque that down to spec. What the spec is, I was just trying to find it on the internet, but I can't imagine it's more than 20-25 pounds or so. I put that in at 20. Feels like that should be plenty. Yeah, 20 feels pretty good. Okay. All right, I think I'm gonna move on from this charger here. Oh yeah, everything feels like it's spinning nice. So here's what the charger looks like so far. All I really got to do now is just put on that compressor wheel, and we can slap it all back together and it'll be fine. I am going to port that housing first. It does spin nice and smooth. Zero play in there, but it's not rubbing as well, so it's, it feels great. A lot better than it was. So I'm going to set this aside and clean up my area a little bit, and then start working on doing a little gasket matching of that exhaust housing. I just want to show you what we're up to here now. I'm about ready to start port matching and to gasket match. Here's the gasket we're going to use. It's a Molly gasket. It looks exactly like the old one that I took off, only in better condition. See, it's the same size. So first I got to clean out these threads, but then I'm going to throw some bolts in there. And you can see the little bit that we're going to take off. It's not very much, but it is, to a 1/4 inch, I think, altogether on all sides. So, ultimately it'll be pretty significant when we take it down to the gasket all the way up to the ramp. So I'm going to get ready to clean out those threads, put the gasket on, mark it, and we dig in. I'm going to take out this ramp here. It goes all the way around. And I'm going to blend that into, I'm going to take out the step up. I'm going to blend that into the ramp. And then I'm not going to touch anything on the top of the ramp at all, because that's where the turbine sits. So I'm just going to polish out that ramp a little bit and just kind of blend it in. And I imagine it's just going to start high and just kind of creep on down low, but it'll provide a nice smooth exhaust transition. Down here, you can actually see these little burn marks, and that's where the gasket, the gasket was out here, and the exhaust was hitting and burning right there. So all that is just causing a nice huge turbulence. The exhaust is going to hit that angle, try to go straight up, and then get pushed in. So it's going to slow down the velocity of the gas and cause a little bit of turbulence and a little unnecessary heat. So we're going to go ahead and straighten that out. And since it's already straightened out on the up pipes, it'll be a nice smooth flow from the up pipe directly into the turbo, and then on up into the turbo. We're going to do that on both sides. Don't have to take as much off on this side right here, but still a pretty fair amount, and we're going to try to blend it best we can. So I'm going to go ahead and I believe it's still an M10 by 1.5. I'm just going to go ahead in with my tap and retap all of these little screw hole things, bolt holes, because they were cross-threaded. Looking at this turbo, I don't know if it came stock with the 360 bearing or if that's a newish kit and has been rebuilt, but either way, some of these bolts were cross-threaded, And that's contributed to part of the issue of getting it out. And you can definitely see a lot of rust in here. Even though I have been soaking it for the past few days or so. But anywho, I'm going to go ahead and get to that so that I can run bolts through. And so I can mark the gasket. And once the gasket's marked where I'm going to be cutting, which you can basically see where that line is anyways because it's burnt. But once that's done, we'll go ahead and start grinding. So as I'm reworking these threads, I just wanted to bring you in real quick because the odds are if you're rebuilding an old LB7 turbo or any old turbo, you're going to want to rework these threads. A few of them were cross-threaded. Every single one of them is super rusty. And just kind of show you. Here's one that has not been worked yet. Got a brand new bolt. It feels pretty crusty right at the beginning even. Just tons of rust and shit in there. It's preventing it from going all the way in nice and easy. You can probably still crank it in there, but it'll be better to just run a tap through it, or if you got a thread reconditioner tool of some sort, that works. I'm using a tap because that's what I have. I know a lot of guys don't recommend those. They recommend the little lighter touch. I forgot what they're called. They're like a thread reconditioner. But these threads definitely need to be reworked. They don't need to be just cleaned. They need to be reworked. And here's an example of one that I just did. And it goes in nice and easy until it starts to hit that bottom here. This one goes in pretty easy as well, since I just did this one. And pretty much bottoms out there. So as I'm going through, I'm just taking my time. Gets a little stiff, you back it out. I hit everything with PB Blaster, rotate it. It's a little stiff there, just kind of work it back and forth. I'm sure there's better techniques, but this is the one that I have found that works all right for me. Spin a little bit more, keep working it back and forth. Because as you're cutting that crap out of there, it's getting caught in your thread, so you want to back it back out. And then go back in. It's a little tough there. Just work those threads a bit. Until you can kind of feel it loosen up. Give it another turn. It's important to do this by hand too, so you don't just whiz right through and screw up your threads. Or potentially snap your die off in your turbo. Okay, I think we're pretty much bottomed out there. Maybe a little bit further. That'll be the bottom. Back that out. Hit it with a little PB Blaster to clean out all the debris. Give it a little test. Seems to go in pretty nice. Okay, and just rinse and repeat with all of the holes until you got them all complete. And that's going to save you a lot of time and headache. Last thing you need is to run a fresh bolt through an old rusty cross-threaded hole and you think it's bottoming out, but it's only halfway there, and then you got an exhaust leak in the back of your turbo and in a hard to reach spot. So this will just takes a little extra time on the front end, but on the back end it's going to save you a lot of headache. So I just wanted to share that with you. Alright, I was a little busy last night. Went ahead and finished everything up. It's all nice and polished. My sand rollers came in this morning. This is really what I wanted to get in there, hit all those nice angles. It helped out a little bit. Couldn't get way up in there like I wanted to. This is gonna be sharp. I am expecting some really nice flow characteristics out of this without that ridge there, and all of this brought down to an even level. I didn't really touch right here at all. Actually, the only thing I hit it with is a 120 grit sand roller just now, just to kind of take down the rough casting just a little bit. I mean, there's still a little bit of casting on there. It's not super smooth compared to everywhere else, but I really did not want to risk opening up that diameter any and negatively influencing the flow characteristics of the turbo. I went ahead and picked and scraped at all the carbon here, got this all nice and level. So it's kind of built up in areas, but now this will have a good seal, hopefully a little better seal. So I figured since it was open and everything was torn apart. I might as well try to level that down best I can. I didn't polish it or anything, which I suppose I can probably hit it with something more than just a pick. I may do that here in a minute, but really wanted this to close, and it seems like it is pretty good as it is. Still might hit it with a sand roller. But otherwise, let's see what else. Oh yeah, I went ahead and hit the turbo, what do you call that? Not the inlet, outlet, compressor side outlet. I didn't show you any of that, apologize. I was just kind of got in a groove and started working late last night. But I kind of evened this out a little bit because it was pretty thick on this wall, especially. And it wasn't super circular, so I went ahead and knocked it down. It's probably about a finger's length. Back is as far as really as I can go. To get it that smooth. I could have knocked down the casting a bit more with my longer burrs, but I didn't have any way to sand it, so I just, you know, went a finger's length, is about as deep back as I could go. And actually opened it up quite a bit. I don't know how much that's going to help overall in the performance department, but when people do this, they get a few extra CFMs out of it, maybe a couple ponies. You know, every little bit helps. You know, I have it torn down. I'm in here anyways. So I got the tools and the time at the moment, so, you know, why not just do that? I went ahead and I went through with a little polisher, and I didn't make it insanely shiny or anything, because again, I didn't want to widen that out anymore than it already is. I just wanted it to be a little smoother. So did that, and I did a very, very rough cut. Make sure you can see that. Yeah, I did a very rough cut here. It's not super sanded down. Actually, since I got them sanding rollers, I might get in there. But I did have to kind of blend that in quite a bit. And the idea is I want that to flow. I want the exhaust to flow with a 1-to-1 ratio from my exhaust housing into the downpipe. So, you know, all these little minor tweaks are going to add up. You know, each one by themselves doesn't surmount to a whole lot of efficiency gains. However, when you add them all up together, it should be fairly decent. I'm suspecting my biggest gains are going to be had right at this turbo by just doing this. This is going to cut down on the back pressure pretty significantly, and it's going to allow for a very clear and smooth path, as well as this downpipe here. You can see how it's flat. I mean, it's cut out, but it's flat. And so I'm thinking that design over, you know, the big cavernous designs, I think I might get a little bit of benefit from that, in that it's going to provide a little bit more back pressure on the wastegate side. That's my theory, and although I can't find any information as to why that design is the way it is and how it came about, and I don't see it as being used very widely, I don't think that necessarily means it's a bad design, but I think it was very intentional the way they did that. And the only thing I can think of is to cause a little extra back pressure in the wastegate to keep that PSI built up in your turbo so that it's actually spinning your turbine and not just blasting straight out your wastegate. How much of a difference that's going to make, I don't know. It's probably not going to be, you know, astronomical, but it is going to help out a little bit. And again, it's the sum of all the parts that make the whole. So, you know, make enough minor tweaks and something significant will happen eventually. At least, you know, that's my thought process. That's where my head's at. You know, to each their own. This is something I think anybody can do, and it is significantly cheaper than a new turbo. Is it more timely? Yeah, it does take more time to do this, but it ultimately, you know, if you already have the tools, it's cheaper. But I think with all the tools I purchased. I don't know, maybe I'll tally that up at the end. Things that I needed already, you know, a die grinder and a needle scaler, my auntie tickler, as I call it, big air compressor, bunch of bits. I mean, it all adds up, but ultimately it's like paying for your own education, you know. If you want to learn how to do something, which porting, gasket matching was one thing I wanted to learn how to do, then you got to pony up for the tools, you got to put in the time, you got to practice, and you know, this is my first time porting anything, so I think it's gonna turn out all right. And I really like how this turned out. Okay, gonna move on to put things together. All right, we're gonna put on this Spool Logic turbo compressor wheel. Give you that part number again here. You can check that out. The best price on the internet right now for quality compressor wheels. Give you one more look here. Nice tall 11 blade, billet aluminum, already balanced. You can see those balancing cut marks right there, as well as right there. Installation, pretty straightforward. Go ahead, toss that on there. Tight fit. Might apply a little bit of lube to help things out here. Pretty tight tolerance. Should fit just fine though. Okay, I got that on. It was way too tight, way too tight compared to the stalker, so I did something that's probably very ill-advised and something I'm not going to recommend you do, but I did it and it worked so far. Took this drill, 1/4-inch bit, and on this billet aluminum one, I just kind of worked it, 'cause, you know, it's pretty loose on there, and I just kind of work the walls back and forth. And I test it, work the walls back and forth a little bit, test it, and I kind of even use the this cast wheel as a reference point, and just kind of seeing how loose it was on the bit. And yeah, it was pretty tight on there. But now I can slide it on there, you know, with about as much difficulty as the stock one, which is, you know, it's has some tight tolerances so that it stays on there, but it's not too bad. And probably loosen that up a little bit. So ready to put the nut on here. I'm gonna go ahead and put that on the right-handed threads, so therefore you spin it to the right. Oh, looks like that thread got mashed up a little bit. Let's see if I can fix it here. There, fix that thread. It really does not have to be very tight at all, because once the turbo spins, it's going to tighten it to what it needs to be. So I think it's really like 10 inch-pounds. So like maybe just a snuggin. I've got a little rub there, so I'm just going to back it off a little bit. I'll make it just a little tighter, make it a little looser. A little bit of rubbing. Make sure to not hear any rubbing. Anywho, got to readjust it when it gets in the turbo anyways. Alright, it's about time to put the charger into the exhaust housing. Get those mated up. And to start off with, I'm just going to put some anti-seize on this mating surface, just because, you know, I can almost guarantee I will be the next guy to take this apart. If something goes wrong, I'm definitely going to be the guy to take this apart. So I'm going to save myself just a little bit of misery and just anti-seize the mating surface so that it doesn't seize right up again. You know what? Might as well go in here as well. Okay, got some anti-seize on there. We got our band back here. Get that somewhere out of the way. Okay. Place this down. Give everything one final look over. Make sure everything is lined up, pressed. Oh, yep. I think I'm gonna actually, I forgot to take off this gasket. I'm gonna do that real quick. All right, about ready to put this back on now. Okay, got everything where I want it. Took off that gasket. I just kind of used the sander and just sanded it off. Put a new one on here in a minute. Okay, so we got this little locator pin. It goes right down there. There's a little hole there. You can see that right there at the bottom. I got the ring back on here. And I'm just going to very gently lower it in. Try to get that locator pin exactly where it needs to be. It seems like that's where it needs to be. Grab a dead blow. Maybe a couple more whacks. My big dead blow, there it is. Okay, actually I take everything back off and I went in there with some sanding bits and chiseled out all the carbon because it was a really tight fit. Wasn't wanting to go in the way it should, but that's, you know, there's an excess of carbon buildup in there, and I forgot to remove that. So FYI, definitely clear all the carbon out. I even had to use some of the bigger burrs and some of these little sanding bits to get down in there. And then of course I used a trusty old pick to scrape on it. Anywho, let's go ahead and get this line back up here. Oh yeah, seems like it wants to go in now. That's much better already. Okay. Give it a couple taparoos with the hammer here. All right, guys. So I got 8 minutes left of SD card before I gotta dump it. That's gonna take a long time, so I'm gonna kind of skip around on these last parts. I put the band on after it's fully seated. I put the nut down below these coolant lines and kind of in between the oil return so that I can access it, but also so it's out of the way. And clearing out all that carbon and everything. I know I didn't show that to you, but I showed you what it looked like afterwards. That made a big difference. As you seen when I was first pounding on the two mating surfaces, it was stuck and it did not want to go down all the way, so I pulled it back out, and it was even rough getting back out. And I was looking at it and I was like, oh yeah, that's right, there was a bunch of carbon buildup that I wanted to take out. That's what was making it stuck, and it wouldn't seat properly. So it's one thing you definitely want to look out for, and clean it out with whatever you got, screwdrivers, chisels. If you got some die grinders, use that. Wire brush. Just try to clean that up as much as possible so it's all nice and shiny again, and all the carbon's not inhibiting the mating surface. And then it went on really freaking easy after that point. I just gave it a couple of taps, as you've seen, and it went right on, right on. That's what you want to see. So for this last bit, we got to put on the cover, which is pretty self-explanatory, I think. It only goes and needs to go pretty much just like that. I don't think I marked it, but we know how it goes. That's what I was supposed to do. Yeah, need to put this on as squarely as possible. Before that, the one major thing that you want to do is put a little layer of RTV sealant, a little gasket maker, right here or right here, so that when it mates up, there's no air leakage. But that's really the only main trick that you need to do. I'll probably lay it down when I put this thing on and try to get it as square on there as square as possible. Everything lines up, looks straight. Isn't going to be too awkward. Then maybe give it a couple of taps. Something like that. So that spins freely. Anywho, I'm going to go ahead and pull that back off, RTV sealant it, and then catch up with you in a minute. Okay, we got everything put back together here. You're gonna want to play with the compressor wheel a bit, over tighten it, try to get it nice and seated, back it up a little bit, tighten it up again, do one of those things, because if it is not back all the way, it will rub on your housing. But I think I got it, so I'm going to give you a little demonstration here. So I think that's pretty good for, just having some grease and a little PB blaster in there to lube it up. Once we got full exhaust and nice hot oil going through there and everything's all nice and broken in, I think we'll be in business. But I think I'm going to call the turbo part done for now. Just need to break in the bearings and everything. So let me turn this around. See it? I got to put the wastegate on, of course, but otherwise turbo is good to go. Yeah, it's kind of a beast, but you know, we did more than just a turbo swap, and we did more than just a basic turbo rebuild and compressor wheel swap out. We did some port and polishing. We did the whole 9 yards, so this should react like a completely different turbo. Should feel brand new and should respond very nicely, is what I'm hoping, especially once it is broken in. So with that said, I am running out of time here. Got 3 minutes left before I got to transfer a bunch of video footage. So we'll see if we get to reinstallation. Otherwise, I'll show you everything when it's all put back together, and then we'll talk about how it's doing. But for now, turbo's back together. I got my pipes and everything painted up here. I'm going to throw some heat wrap on the down pipes, or yeah, the up pipes. Down pipe is good to go. We are pretty much ready for reassembly now. All right, guys. Catch you here in a bit. All right, guys. That is the job. That's how you put that turbo back together, do a little port matching on the housing. And yeah, I got it. I can tell you right now, I got it all slapped back together, and it freaking runs phenomenal. I really do enjoy it. But you're going to see that in the next episode when I take it out for a little rip ski up the mountain, and turbo works fine, but we have some overheating issues. So we either have a head gasket issue or we have a lifted injector issue. So that brings us into the rest of the series, where we throw an old pig back in the shop and we start ripping apart that engine. We actually remove the cylinder heads altogether, do new gaskets, studs, and some 45 over LDS sack nozzled injectors. And then I do a full port and polish as well on the cylinder heads, well, on the exhaust side, the intake side, and the bowls, of course. Lap the valves, and I take you along for the whole ride and show you every step of the way, you know, how I did it. And I can say now I've probably got over 1,000 miles on the engine since I put it all back together. It runs great, freaking phenomenal. Brand new truck altogether, and just ripped down the road, even having a camper on the back of it when I had it back in stock tune. But now I got it back in tow haul tune. It's even better. So at the very end of the series, once everything is all put back together, I got some new toys to show you, and we'll take old pig out, and we'll just see how it runs, and I'll show you all the testing and everything I'm going to do. Pretty excited for it. All right, guys, so if this all sounds like your jam, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and the like button, notifications, so that you can stay up to date with the LB7 Duramax spool up project. All right, guys, we'll see you on that next one.